Hey there, we're the Westlaw Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Scaspo.
Big week for the Cats in a number of different venues. I think leading off, heading to Field Hockey Corner, undefeated season. Wow.
Unbelievable.
Just incredible run by the ladies.
Field Hockey Corner, right, exists at this point on a feat that no Northwestern field hockey team's ever done before. But then again, no one but women's lacrosse across any Northwestern team sport has ever done it before, which is the Cats had an undefeated regular season. Pretty incredible. And an undefeated regular season where obviously we know that Northwestern and North Carolina have dodged each other and potentially, have a date in the national title game if everything breaks the way everyone wants it to break. Aside from that, Northwestern basically played every other top team in the country. It's been just an absolute rough schedule, partly because, and we were just talking about this before the start of the pod, the Big Ten's really good at field hockey. It's a strong field hockey conference. And Northwestern ran the table in the regular season. It's unbelievable. This team is so good. It's funny, we were trying to figure this out before the pod because, again, aside from Northwestern, we're not in granular at the national field hockey scene. And we were trying to figure out because Ohio State was fourth in the polls when they played Northwestern in this final game of the season, and yet Ohio State's fifth in the Big Ten tournament seeding, which seems pretty incongruous that they could be fourth in the nation and then fifth in the tournament seeding. But effectively, it's a mix of Ohio State having only one loss until really late in the season when they lost three in a row, basically in the last week of the year. And the other part, as Gus said, is that it just doesn't make much sense that they were ever ranked that high. But
yeah, they played, unlike Northwestern, who has played a ton of top teams, Ohio State has played like none.
Right. So regardless, it was still a highly ranked team, yet another top 5 team coming in that the Cats were going to play. They handled their business once again. Ashley Sessa, who this is a sophomore who is very much in the best field hockey player conversation. And obviously we know Northwestern has many of those players. And depending on whether you consider a goalkeeper to be in that conversation or not, Annabelle Skubishi is right up at the top of that list too, right? So with that said, Sessa is she scored both of the goals against Ohio State. She's an incandescent player and really, a standard bearer for the sport is going to be over the next 2 years. But this team as a whole is just unbelievable. One random moment that stuck out to me during the game, and we tweeted out, is Maddie Zimmer, who of course, along with Sessa, they were Olympians, they played in the Olympics, and Zimmer is coming back. She's coming back, grad student. She took that year off to prep for the Olympics, so she's been, a player representing Northwestern forever, right? And such a leader of the team. And when Sessa scored, she scores this unbelievable sliding goal where I think from my perspective, again, we haven't watched a ton of field hockey in our lives, and the amount of excitement with which Ashley Sessa scores goals, if you're sitting at home and you haven't watched and you're like, how exciting can a field hockey goal be? Oh, I assure you, really exciting. The way she's, this one, it's a sliding goal. It's unbelievable. But then watching Zimmer as just such a leader, the kind of person where you're like, oh yeah, that's a team leader of the best team in the nation. She just immediately runs over, picks Sessa up with one arm, and immediately pulls her into the celebration of all the other teammates. It's just so cool. And it's just one of those things where you're just like, oh, these are just champions. So they've done it. They've done what only 3 Northwestern women's lacrosse teams have ever done, which is an undefeated regular season. And now postseason play starts. And obviously for this team in this year and the way that last year ended, there's a whole, we always say this with lacrosse, but there's a whole other set of goals for this field hockey team. That's, they're not celebrating on this undefeated regular season. They're looking ahead. And that starts Friday, the 8th. They will be playing either Rutgers or the aforementioned Ohio State, the winner of the 4-5 game. Northwestern is the only team of the 7 teams in the Big Ten tournament that get a bye. Winner of Rutgers, Ohio State will play the Cats on the 8th. This is in Maryland. Maryland's hosting the Big Ten tournament. If the Cats win that one, they will then play in the championship game against, who knows, any number of teams. I mean, it could be Maryland, it could be Michigan. We will see. Both of these games, 1 p.m. on the 8th and 11 a.m. on the 10th, are both going to be on BTN. So obviously you want to be watching this team because they just did something that no field hockey team and no team of any kind other than lacrosse has ever done, and now they're going to try to heap a lot of postseason laurels on top of that.
Well, it's we know that the end game is the last game of the season.
Yep.
This would be, if they can make it, it'll be the 4th year in a row.
Yep.
So that's what we hope for. And with the regular season, we talked a lot about this on the last couple pods. We know a handful of y'all made it out to watch the Cats last Friday, and as we mentioned on the podcast, we've got 2 folks that have won our little drawing. We're going to be sending them our tickets for a couple of basketball games here in November. Once we lock in those schedules, we will be doing some additional little giveaways of some of our non-conference basketball tickets, and we'll probably get at least 1 or 2 Big Ten games out there for folks who are interested later in the year. But things like leaving us a 5-star review, engaging with some of the other programs that are out there, etc. So, but as by way of transition to basketball, if tonight is any indication, those tickets are going to be a hot commodity, y'all.
Definitely think you're going to want those. Men's basketball started off tonight. Just finished up, maybe about half an hour before we got on here tonight. 90-46, almost double up Lehigh. Just a massive performance. And defensively, it was 51-15 at halftime. Come on. The way
the first 4 Lehigh possessions were 4 turnovers.
Yeah.
Just absolutely incredible.
Martinelli leads the way with 26 and 10, double for him. But
for those that might be saying, "Oh, it's just Lehigh." Last year we opened on November 6th against Binghamton and won 72-61 in a game that we were white knuckling a little bit midway through.
Yeah,
and it's Lehigh is not some great mid-major team or anything like that, but they're not the bottom of the barrel either. And I think what was most exciting was some of the performances of the new players.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, Martinelli with 26, Luke Hunger with 15 off the bench. I mean, you got Hunger and Nicholson, who's going to be, hopefully sharing the minutes down at the post. But you've got a couple guys coming in. KJ Wyndham, freshman, 10 points.
I mean,
not just 10 points though.
6 assists.
The confidence and the command and the just natural comfort with the ball that was on display when he was out there in his very first college game was transcendent. I mean, it leaped off of the screen and off of the paper and off of the court. Just there's a lot of times, freshmen can get going in an early season game, et cetera. This felt different, and there are a lot of people not making comps to Boo Buie, but calling out that the last time a true freshman scored double digits in their first appearance, it was Boo, et cetera. But the just the basketball IQ and the comfort and assertiveness on the court stood out in leaps and bounds for this dude's young age.
Yeah, I shouts to Henry Freeman, the sports editor for the Daily, who I think it was maybe 5 days ago, but after I think it was the Lewis exhibition, tweeted KJ Wyndham is going to be Northwestern men's basketball's next star. That aged really well. It was so exciting. So full disclosure, we had parent teacher conferences tonight for our daughter's school, and then after that, we came home and immediately took a walk. So then I got back in and immediately realized on Twitter that the KJ Wyndham assance is going on. And obviously he's not the only one who had a great game, but there is that magic, right? Pete Skoronsky would be a great example, where a guy puts on the purple for the first time and is just incredible immediately. And I always think of, our experience watching that Maryland game that year, right? And you just see this guy steps on the field immediately and you're like, oh my gosh, is everyone watching? Are we all watching? And Twitter had this whole moment, right? And I don't mean to put KJ Wyndham in Pete Skoronsky territory, but in terms of the discourse that was going on Twitter, it's just great. Like, you see it and everyone's just getting excited, being like, oh my gosh, look at this guy. Like, he showed up. He's got it right away. He's going to fit, right? And it's just super special. It's really cool. And again, that's like, obviously, this is a game where Nicky Buckets went off. And obviously, we know we were missing Brooks. And Barry got in foul trouble early. And that still there was this one thing that everyone took away, right? Where, it seems like on a night where everybody looked great, still, like, KJ Wyndham is the guy where everyone goes, like, oh, that's just, like, amazing. And I don't know, there's almost this like larger thing attached to that too. And we were talking that one thing that was really apparent to anyone who watched this game is this is a non-con opener against a Patriot League school, and the students showed out. Like, it was obvious from the student section, they couldn't wait for the first game. And I think there's almost this generational piece where, like, those of us who are a little bit older, I think for those of us, once you get past a certain point, football is the thing, right? And so much of that is because all of our, like, Cinderella brilliant moments that, that minted us as Northwestern fans for life began and ended with football. But we totally understand that for this younger generation, particularly the undergrads or the ones who've just graduated, that, like, this basketball thing has done everything that 95, 96, 2000 did for all of us in football. And they didn't forget. They've totally turned out. And it was just, they were at 100 out of 100 from, like, the get-go. And then to see, again, you have, like, a new star minted and everything. And it just brings it all home to me. It's like this fan base, these young students and everything, expect the very best from this basketball team. Not just like this season, but that's their standard now. And the players feel that they're going to deliver that too. And it's just awesome.
The other guy who was at 100 tonight and also has high expectations for this basketball team is Chris Collins.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And it was quite apparent. I mean, he was coaching to the max, up 50 points, just like on guys when they made mistakes, pushing the team. It's almost like he has experienced this roster turnover after a big NCAA tournament experience and wants to make sure it doesn't go the same way as it went previously. And
right.
The intensity and the urgency with which this team from top to bottom, including the coaching staff and the student section and the support, came out tonight is pretty compelling for what this season might be able to be.
And,
for sure.
we had, it's a great opportunity to kind of really jump off. We got a game at Dayton on Saturday night. So that'll be a nice road test just right off the top before coming home to take on UIC, Eastern Illinois, Montana State, Pepperdine. We got Butler coming up at the end of the month. Just that's kind of the beginning of our non-con schedule. We got a little Big Ten taste in the beginning of December at Iowa, home for Illinois. Then Georgia Tech, DePaul, Northeastern before we get into the new year and the new massive Big Ten schedule. We'll dive into this a lot more as we move forward. I think with the bye week this week for football, I think the plan is next week we'll kind of get into basketball a little bit more, kind of dive a little deeper. But with this, what a great start tonight. We would be remiss if we didn't talk about that just right off the top, because that was fantastic.
Yeah. And just the last thing I'll say on that, because brought it up, is the Collins piece and the again, like, if you're above a certain age, like, you totally remember the first time Northwestern made the dance and then what happened the season after. And I think we're in the camp that Allstate Arena has always shouldered a little bit too much of the blame for something that, in fact, there were, like, more factors at play. But it certainly was a major factor. And the fact that they were playing to crickets right after a tournament. Well, they weren't playing to crickets tonight. They were playing to a raucous student section. that has been dipped in magic waters over the past 2 seasons and is here from the jump to give their all for this team. And that makes a huge difference.
For sure. I think, as we turn to the football team, the Cats beat Purdue in overtime on the road, 26-20. Was it the prettiest performance? No, it wasn't. Was there a lot to kind of wring our hands about? Sure. But you know what? At the end of the day, we got a road win in conference. That's nothing to sneeze at. That puts us at 4-5, which looks a hell of a lot better than 3-6. And, with a win in one of our last three, that puts us in at least in position to potentially go bowling if there are not enough 6-6 teams. And Michigan, Illinois have their flaws. We'll talk about that as we move forward. But for this week's game, some really great takeaways. Joseph Hyman, 51-yard touchdown run, and the walk-off touchdown reception. What a game!
Yeah, Hyman had a really nice bookend performance there. I think before we get into the specifics of individual players, I think it's worthwhile spending just a little bit of time at the higher level, because I think watching this game, the experience of most people who are watching this game live, and I will admit I did not watch it live. I was at the Children's Museum in Indianapolis, proudly displaying my purple all day long in enemy territory, I might add.
Attaboy.
2 for 2 wearing my gear in Indiana, not at a Northwestern game. But regardless, it was clearly a very frustrating game to watch, and a lot of that was the penalties and the miscues. A lot of that was the offense continued to look very inconsistent, and I think going back and getting out of the moment. And there's certainly plenty of when you look at the tape, you look back at some of the opportunities that were there. Like Northwestern's offense could have done a hell of a lot more in this game, but I think instead of fixating on those things that did not go, that could have gone so much better, I want to focus a little bit on what did go well from that high level, and a lot of it is. The first half, Northwestern had 4 possessions. I'm not counting the very, the kneel down at the end of the half where we only had 25 seconds left on the clock, but 4 possessions. We scored 2 touchdowns and a field goal on those 4 possessions. Now, the other one had a really bad interception, but that's marked improvement for an offense that has really struggled to score in a large swath of this year. Even against Maryland, our offense didn't really come alive until later in the game. Second half is a different story. We had 5 possessions in the second half. The first 4 of those had really inopportune penalties that put Northwestern in difficult position throughout the course of that drive, or those drives. And it also seems like the offense was just disconnected. The quarterback play was inconsistent. They could not gain yardage or move the ball, and Purdue slowly clawed their way back to tie the game. And it felt like this inevitable march towards another loss, which they righted the ship in overtime. And I just when you step back and look at it that way, I think, again, in the moment, this felt awful. but stepping back, we won a game where a lot of the mistakes that have plagued us throughout the year have been, were still prevalent. And the fact that we haven't solved those is a huge issue and a huge concern going forward. But we also were better in enough spots to get a W. And that's something that you can build from, as opposed to what we saw the prior 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I know that there are a bunch of you listening who are just not wanting to put on rose-colored glasses, and that you're listening and you're being you're listening to Scudge and you're being you're being way too, you're being way too charitable. This is what we saw, etc. And here's the thing, as someone who went on a rant last week, okay, and was legit pissed off, I'm not this isn't Paul Feinbaum. Like, we're not, like, our goal is not to get on and rant and bitch about stuff every week. And that's just not, it's not fun. And that's not to say that there aren't, like, a bunch of problems. There are major problems in this game. As Gus said, like, this was a rough watch. I would describe it as bleak in a lot of ways. But a win is a win. And I guess, like, for me, the single biggest thing, and this is the thing, because I know for a lot of you fans, you're like, that, I've I'd have to go back to probably Howard last year to think about, like, a win where, like, I came out with, like, a taste in my mouth, right? Get it. But just think of, like, for me, that there were so many things, like Jack Lausch, with everything he's gone through, walk-off touchdown pass, right? Walk-off touchdown pass on the road in the Big Ten, right?
And look, look at his stat line. I mean, I know, there were some issues, but 23 of 35, 250 yards, a touchdown and no interceptions.
He had moments at the time. Again, there's this whole other discussion, and again, I think our goal is to table at least part of it for next season. I mean, for next week. There were times when Jack Lausch was the only thing Northwestern had going, and then there were other times where he submarined, things when, like, there were wide open touchdown passes to be had, right? I mean, and it's like, it's the continually maddening thing of, why can't everything just get put together at the same time across every position group, right? Like, why can't that happen? How are we never able to land this plane? But the fact of the matter is, you're right. Like, especially on third down, dude made a bunch of big third down plays, and we mentioned the penalties. There were a bunch of times where Jack Lausch was put in a hole because of penalty or blocking issues that he had nothing to do with, and then bailed Northwestern out. And I mean, again, we also all saw, like, the wide open missed throws and stuff. But again, coming back, it's like, this is writ large for him. We all know the struggles he's been going through. Walk-off touchdown pass. Sprinted downfield in joy, celebrated with his fans. David Braun was getting interviewed on the field after this game. You can see him holding back tears. He's getting choked up as he's talking. It's like, this is a really good guy, and this has been a really tough stretch for him. And I'm sure the strain that it's put on the coaching staff and everything that they've had to deal with has been really hard. And again, we only want the best for these guys. We don't want things to not work. We want things to work. I want to see these guys. And even Lujan, who, with 5 minutes left in this game, Lujan is staring into the void as much as you possibly can. Like, again, like, he's had his head coach absolutely go to bat for him and reaffirm his job security. But I mean, like, Lujan's offense was dangerously close to taking a loss to a historically bad Purdue team, and people would have been vociferous about that. And again, for him, with a couple of frankly great play calls in overtime, to come out and get the offense going and pull through, like, I feel good for those guys. The defense, the whole defense, a guy like Jalen Pate. Look at the performance Jalen Pate had. I haven't seen his PFF grade yet. It's going to be insane. He was dominant. It's not just that he had 3 TFLs. He destroyed Purdue's offensive line all day. Was held by 2 guys on a no call that would have been a sack for him. Utterly dominant. In the past couple of weeks, the guys on the defense have turned in performances like that and then had to take losses. They didn't against Purdue. To Scuzz's point, they get to take a win away and be like, we earned that win. So, I mean, good for them. There are a ton of problems in this. And if you're a Northwestern fan, it was all brutally familiar stuff. Head-scratching coaching decisions, the timeout mismanagement, right?
I'll be honest, like, I don't feel like we've seen much timeout mismanagement.
No,
this
it's
year.
no.
We have not.
It was bad.
Category.
It was bad here. It wasn't.
Timeouts haven't been really a problem before, and even time management hasn't been a problem before. It's not like they've been trying to do something and screwed up with the clock. It's that they've made preposterous choices in situations, and with the exception of the very, very strange appearances by Ryan Helinski, which is there
are a lot of Northwestern fans right now who are going to go, well, aside from that, Mrs. Lincoln.
Yeah, that was really strange. And I mentioned the interception. I mean, that's the one, like, I don't know why. I cannot come up with a rational reason as to why they decided to do that at the beginning of this game, other than to maybe just like try to spark folks. And that's not to say that Helinski, we haven't seen him out there at all. He could not be more of a different QB from Lausch. It doesn't seem to be the skill set that we need to run this offense right now. It's very hard to wrap my head around. But the timeouts, the delay of games, like the communication seemed to break down in the second half. Who knows? Maybe they're having trouble with the headsets or something. But like that, and then the penalties. The penalties is probably the biggest red flag to me, because it's been a problem all year and they can't seem to get it corrected. I hesitated to get too hot with him last week, but Theron Johnson's got to stop with the after the whistle shenanigans. It's like it almost lost us this game.
He's taking shine off how unbelievably good he's playing.
His play has been unbelievable. Yes. He's cementing himself as the next great Northwestern corner.
Right. And it's like, just, you got to flush this, man. It's just two brutal ones, both inexcusable, and both had a really big impact. And again, that's for a guy who has been a rock back there. So yeah, like that needs to get fixed for good. But again, right, that's another guy. And like after the game, we shouted out Tim McGarrigle. And we know, like, for everyone who's been like major coaching decisions, like, why did Braun make this decision? Why did Braun make this decision? Like, what the heck is Lujan doing with et cetera, et cetera? And I think we're as guilty of this as anyone else. Let's give Tim McGarrigle some love. Like, whoa, Nelly, look at what this guy is doing. Like, I think because it's been so many weeks now, and because there have been some up and downs in terms of like particular things getting us through the passing game at particular times, et cetera, it's like, never lose sight of the fact that it's like Coco, Theron, and a bunch of freshmen and sophomores back there. And they're just like rotating through, right? I mean, we remain with Josh Fussell, a freshman, as our other corner, right? And we have the best linebacker in the Big Ten. He's been out for a couple of weeks now. Grayson Metz stepped in and has been
playing great. He's been playing awesome.
He's been great. And we know what the D-line is. You saw, like, again, a guy like Jalen Pate, like the dominant performance that he had out there. Tim McGarrigle's doing a great job. And we know, like, that, again, like, this defense, when you look at a game like the Iowa game, and we talked about the way they're going to get gassed and the way they're going to get, like some of the will sucked out of them, etc., we shouldn't let any of this take away from the fact that those guys are playing really good defense and have been. And that's without a perfect set of cards.
And they only gave up 47 rushing yards. The entire game. 47 rushing yards.
Dominant. And again, like, I keep coming back to Pate, but what can I say? Like, the guy absolutely destroyed the Purdue offensive line all game. And yeah, they were awesome. And on, again, like, we love to focus on some of those things in terms of what this all actually means. I mean, I would love to say that in some bizarre way, maybe the tail could wag the dog here, and it's like this team just needed a win. Unfortunately, you have Ohio State looming. This Ohio State team, they're currently 38-point favorites against Purdue, and that ought to give you an idea of probably what the spread's going to be like for our game. And again, it's like, it's not that the spread matters, but it's just unfortunate. Like, you kind of wish that we could have Michigan right now, because I feel like, you could capitalize on some of the positive momentum.
You do wish those two teams were reversed for a lot of reasons in the schedule. At the same time, like, you get a bye here to get right. I don't know if we get Xander back or not, but regardless, like, you get a bye to get right, and then you have a zero expectations game. And now, I think the hard part is that they've made this game homecoming. It's at Wrigley. These are some administrative choices that I don't really think were best. If I'm totally honest, I mean, this is going to be
it's going to feel like a Buckeye.
It's going to feel like a Buckeye home game, and Ohio State is very good. Like, full stop. They are very good.
Yeah.
And I remain, skeptical about their ability to win a national championship this year. I remain skeptical about their ability to beat Oregon. a second, when they play a second time, most likely later in the year.
Indiana might have something to say about that.
I agree. I wonder if even Indiana could beat them in 3 weeks' time. But and it's any given Saturday, any crazy stuff happens all the time in this sport. But it is extremely unlikely that Northwestern is going to be able to pull an upset in this game. But it's a zero expectations game, and they can go into it with that mindset and leave it all out on the field. If it goes poorly, it goes poorly. Flush it, and then laser focus on Michigan.
Yeah.
I think that's that is a much easier, next 3 weeks to track than think about when we were coming off that EIU game, going to Washington, and then and then a bye after that, and then having to host Indiana, and just like. This is a much easier track, off of, and even coming off the Maryland game and then going to play Iowa and Wisconsin in successive weeks. I think from a mentality standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, from a team coalescing and focusing on each other standpoint, this is a kind of 2 weeks to get right for, what becomes a Super Bowl type moment.
Yeah, I mean, having said all this, and I totally agree, I do feel like we do need to talk. And again, because I know so many of you, this was a brutal game to watch. It was bleak in a lot of ways. And I think had we not won this game, a lot of people would be like, this is the bottom. And again, therein lies the power of a win, because this win could mean nothing. But then again, if we get a result later in the season, it could be the difference between going to a bowl and not going to a bowl. I mean, it truly is a big thing. Watching the tape back, there is that piece as a Northwestern fan where, on one hand, it can't be understated how much Purdue sucks on defense. They're horrifically bad. So you're going to feel real whiplash in 2 weeks when you watch what maybe is the best defense in the country, where it's an utterly JT Tuiomobile on the defensive line and everyone else that's great, and then just Denzel Burke rolled up on our best receiver. It's not even going to feel like the same sport. Purdue had there were 4 plays in this game. It's staggering. And again, this is we'll have a larger discussion next week about quarterback and the long and winding road and all the different pieces that led us to where we are right now. But there were 4 plays in this game where we ran a pass play and there was a receiver uncovered. I don't mean wide open. I mean Purdue didn't cover him. 3 of those plays should have been touchdowns. The 4th either should have been minimum a 35-yard catch and run or a 55-yard touchdown. That happened 4 times in the game. And we threw incomplete passes on 3 of those, and the 4th was the play that won the game. But watching Purdue, it's just there was so much of us not taking advantage of them just being awful. But I think in a larger sense, there really is that feeling for a lot of people who were watching the game where you're basically so much of what I'm watching feels like I'm looking at us in the mirror. What I'm seeing with Purdue. I'm if we didn't have a defense, there but for the grace of God, go us, right? Because we're watching a team that they just can't execute. They are making all of these big time mistakes, and their coach is making a couple of plays. He's making a couple of decisions where it's they went for it twice in this game where no one expected them to go for it, and no one thought they were going to get it, and then they didn't get it either time, and it was just a disaster. And I think you're looking at those reflections and you're being this is it. Is this what we are? Are we Purdue but with a better defense? Because that's not what we want to be. We want to have better aspirations. We don't want this to just be that we're baked, that we're 4-8, and that's a 4-8 team that we are. Again, when we probably next week and the week on, we'll get into the fact that Michigan is no peach, and really neither is Illinois. And those 2 teams are dealing with all kinds of problems too. But do we really want everyone to be thinking, gosh, maybe we'll be less of a mess than they're a mess? That's kind of the reality, but we want to see this team take steps. We want to see growth, and we got to win here, and that's great, but it's been 3 weeks and 4 of the last 5 of just feeling like we're watching the same stuff again. And, again, we're about to play a really good team, and hopefully we can still find growth, come through that, and then find a way to be better playing those last 2 teams on the schedule that are going to make all the difference.
I do want to talk about, I hate being sour grapes talking about officiating, but it did seem a little one-sided. Yes, we had some bad penalties and, some, inexcusable penalties that stymied drives, but it was very one-sided. Just watching it there, I'm like, what is happening here?
Yeah, there was a couple. Again, the one that jumps back to me is Pate, because he was just being so thoroughly dominant and he just got screwed on one. There was that penalty disparity. At the same time, you go back and you look at a lot of them and you're like, yeah, that we did that one, you're right. There was that disparity. The one other thing that I wanted to mention, this was a week where I put up a couple of tweets after the game, today, prior to really going through the film. And it's not that, we put up a big thing about Lujan and comparing Northwestern to South Dakota State, and that's something we can table for next week. And I kind of wish I wouldn't have put it up when I put it up. Not because it's not true, I think it is true writ large, but I don't think it's representative of this game. Lujan actually called a pretty good game in this game. Again, I'm not trying to...
something to point out, to get specific about it, adjusted late in the game to throw the ball to the running backs because they're having a ton of success with it, and that led directly to the Hyman touchdown. Cam Porter ended up being the leading receiver on the team with 8 catches, and I'm
not trying to belabor this, but Zach Lujan called 4 plays where the guy was uncovered. All 4 should have been touchdowns. 1 was a touchdown, and it was the game-winning touchdown. He did a really good job with the backside of the backfield stuff.
As I've said many times in the past, I remember all the time talking about Mick McCall. Look, if your quarterback is uncomfortable throwing it deep, that's on you as the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. So, yes, right. I get that he his scheme worked, and it's
yes.
We're what,
I'm
9 games in
the play calls.
I know we're 9 games into the Lujan experience, so yes, I know there's a lot of people that want to launch him into the sun, but at some point that stuff comes back to the QB development. But so much of what we're dealing with is a young QB,
right.
The delay of games, the
right.
lack of confidence throwing some of those balls, whether he's missing reads or late on reads or this, so much of that is just about a young QB.
To his credit, he did pull it down and run a lot more against Purdue than he has in the previous games.
Yeah.
He did.
It wasn't there, and he pulled it down, and he did what we've been asking him to do for the past several weeks. He didn't try to force it. He went for it himself.
There remain monstrous issues with this read option. It's just... there is some hurdle that he just can't get over right now, and maybe it would just come with time, and maybe it won't come this season, and that is what it is. But he did run more, and they did set it up for him to run more, and they gave him a lot of throws to the backs, and he took advantage of that, and that was great. There was one little play in this game that was really good, and I didn't notice it until I looked at the play, and it's a little thing. We ran a QB dive that was absolutely obliterated. It was a QB. The play on the surface looks like an utter disaster, and the blocking just didn't hold. But what it was Hyman shifted from one side of the backfield to the other side of the backfield at the time. And I actually went back and checked this because I was like, was there an option here? And it wasn't. No, they just sold it. It was a run all the way. You can tell because Josh Thompson's 5 yards downfield. There was no pass option on this play. This was a QB draw. But Hyman runs a hard wheel route out of the backfield. And not only does he run a hard wheel route, he turns back and gestures for the football. I'm open, throw it to me, throw it to me, throw it to me, on a play that could not be a pass, but looked exactly like the play we won the game on. And that's not an accident, because the next time we came out to that, Purdue is thinking, They ran out of this the last time they showed us this kind of look. And that's the game-winning play. So again, it's like we all know, and everything Scott said is right, like all these development issues and everything is a bunch of problems. He called a pretty good game in this one. And yes, it is absolutely true that at least in some metaphysical sense, he was coaching for his job down the stretch of this football game. He still called a good game, called the right plays, and gave us a chance in this one. So again, so many problems, but it's worth pointing out when things go right, because again, we're not here to rant. We want everything to get better here.
Do we know what Ryan Walters was thinking, going for it on fourth down in overtime? Like,
I don't know. I mean, the first one, I guess both of them, but he very much feels like a guy who's just pushing all his chips in because he's coaching for his job on a week-to-week basis. I mean, that's what it feels like to me. When they went for that first fourth down in this game, I was like, well, we know he's calling the plays. They told us, and he's calling the plays like a guy who thinks he's getting fired if they don't win this game. So that was where I got that one. But at the end of the day, yeah, neither of them made much sense.
I mean, when nothing is working for you, and look, Purdue's 1-7, they're 0-5 in conference. Nothing has worked for them all year. The closest they've gotten is pushing Illinois to OT and pushing us to OT.
Right.
And they've been blown out or beat pretty bad in most of their other games. And when you start reaching, it's natural, right? And I think we've seen our coaching staff in that blender this year as well, where they're just like, try this, and it goes horribly wrong. I mean, the Iowa game in a nutshell, right? At least on the offensive side. And so I think, like, I don't say that to I guess I say that out of just some empathy for what's been a really rough year for Walters in year two, a year we thought Purdue could show something, and instead they're firing their offensive coordinator 5 games into the year, and their returning QB isn't showing much sauce, and their defense is a shell of itself. The transfers that they got in have not panned out, have not landed, including all the guys from Georgia and everything, right? Like, I think when you find yourself up against a wall like that, it's not even about like, is he going to lose his job or not? It's like a complete loss of confidence of like, shit, everything I've tried has failed. Well, like, maybe I'll go the George Costanza route and just do the opposite of what I think I should do and see if it works.
It's possible. You mentioned one thing, and again, we'll get to all this down the road, but there is, and this is the thing, because I was not a happy camper after this game, and like you said, our friend Chris Giannini coming in, that's an SEC guy from SEC country, and he's coming in from the outside reading it, being like, hey, road Big Ten, road conference win, take it, right? And that's like, I mean, literally, like, I won't step on it because we'll talk about A&M, I'm sure, probably later. But it's like we watched A&M and predicted they were going to go to South Carolina and just face plant. And it's like, it's hard to win major college football games on the road. It's also just wins are super duper valuable. And in the interest of that,
this football ain't baseball. You know what I mean?
It's just, it's like, I know, like, sometimes the way you get them sucks. But you mentioned in passing, Purdue took us to overtime, just like they took Illinois to overtime. And you know what? That's an Illinois team that somehow has been ranked forever, despite the fact that they barely beat Kansas and they barely beat Purdue. Those two teams are a combined 3-13. Illinois has also lost 2 in a row. They've also scored, I think it's less than 14 points a game over their last 5 to any team other than Purdue, right? If you're looking for a path here, it's like suddenly when you pick up win number 4 and you're number 1 in the country in APR, you can start looking at a team like Illinois and being like, maybe you don't have it together. Maybe you'll be the thing that puts us into a bowl game, right? Or maybe it'll be a Michigan team that's having just as many problems as we are. Like, when you're trying to get to 5 or you're trying to get to 6, it's a big thing. And also too, I suppose in this sense too, and this goes to generational thing or I guess recent history, there definitely was a feeling amongst a bunch of Northwestern fans, and I totally get it, that the number 3, specifically 3-9, is such a sore spot for fans of this football team that just clearing that whole hurdle and making it 4-8, I think makes a lot of people feel better, and I definitely understand that.
John, you asked that question about, when's the last time you felt this uninspired by a win. And I was just doing a little schedule surfing, and I came across the season opening 2018 Northwestern win against Purdue. A game in which we won 31-27, scoring 0 points in the second half.
That's right.
And the entire second half was just this
Holding on
death
for
march.
dear life.
Holding on for dear life. You had Clayton Thorson, who was coming off the knee injury, and TJ Green alternating possessions.
Was that the Rondale Moore game?
Yes, that was the Rondale Moore game, where he had close to 200 yards rushing and receiving, and then another 125 in kick returns. It's not exactly the same, but it was the sort of thing where it was like, whoa, I thought we had a better defense. Whoa, how can we not score on this team? Oh my God, are we going to lose? And we ended up coming out of it okay. And then a couple weeks later, you had the Jeremy Larkin retirement and a whole bunch of. I mean, that 2018 season was a season of ups and downs for sure. But the symmetry of the game itself is what strikes me in that what was working in the first half just stopped. You even have the weird QB rotation thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm twisting myself in knots here, but I was trying to find another game that reminded me of the feeling I had watching this one come down to the wire of thinking, oh my God, they are going to come back and tie this up and beat us, and we are just going to be, totally inert in the moment, and we weren't. And there's something to be said for being able to get up off the mat and dust ourselves off and actually counterpunch at the end to win this game.
Well, and again too, it's the definitely try as best you can to step outside the Northwestern bubble, and I get it. There's so much of us being like, oh, we've done this dance before, etc. I totally get it. Just try to step outside of the bubble right now and realize that there are 18 teams in this conference, and 8 of them have as bad or a worse conference record than we do right now. You think we're having problems, we're a mess for reason X, reason Y, reason Z? Get in line. The wheels have fallen off at Nebraska. The wheels have fallen off at Rutgers. The wheels have fallen off at Maryland. The wheels have fallen off at USC. Okay? And then you have teams like Michigan, Wisconsin. Wisconsin, our game's about the best thing they've got going. They just got pasted by Iowa. Michigan is a mess. We know that Michigan is an onside kick that didn't go their way, and really a miracle Kalel Mullings touchdown run against USC from being 3-6 right now. This conference is sloppy. And so again, it's to the victor go the spoils, down the stretch. We joked about it, online, the joke of the joggers and the bear, right? It's in the Michigan game and the Illinois game, we know how bad it is right now. We know how much of a mess things are, but we don't have to improve all the way. We just have to improve 1 point better than Michigan or Illinois do. That's the goal. And even if that happens in one of those 2 games, APR might get us into a bowl. So, it's there are plenty of teams with warts. There are plenty of fan bases that are not happy right now. And it's just who can pull something out of the fire here?
Well, like you say, we have the bye week this week. We don't have a game to preview, but
little pirate booty.
Yeah,
you mentioned
pirate
some
booty.
guys, but Cam Porter leading receiver, Joseph Hyman obviously with the touchdowns. You mentioned Jalen Pate. You mentioned Grayson Metz leading the team with tackles. Luke Akers nailed 2 field goals. Nice to get back on the right side of things in that space as well.
We should say too, Akers has missed a couple really long field goals. Inside of a certain range, the dude is just money. And that's not to say oh, he can't hit beyond a certain. It's the two field goals that people think of him missing are really long, hard field goals, and he's
fall into that questionable coaching decision. And
Yep.
And I mean, like Luke Akers doing a great job, like definitely.
So this is another interesting thing that's kind of popping out to me. 6 different receivers with more than one catch.
Mm-hmm.
Against Indiana, we had 3 receivers with more than one catch. Against Iowa and Wisconsin, it was I can't click fast enough. It was similarly not great. So that like that focus of spreading the ball around, against Wisconsin, 3 receivers with more than one catch, only 4 receivers with a catch against Wisconsin. And then in the Iowa game, similarly, not great. You had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys, but it was 2 each. So, it seems like with Iowa, they at least started to emphasize like spread the ball around, getting it to more receivers, and it started to actually pay dividends this week. And that's maybe something we hope to see. I think early on, there was, we've talked about this. There was way too much focus on AJ Henning alone. They started to really prioritize getting the ball to Kurtz. If you're looking for another, potential silver lining of development in this, in Jack Lausch, is finding a lot of his other guys to throw to besides those top 2.
Yeah, Lang had a really good game, really impressive. Covey, he got hurt in this one, and obviously that's a guy who's battled injuries, and I really hope that he comes back in this one. He looked really good early in this game, had 2 big catches. So again, hopefully he's good. Calvin Johnson, the stat line says one catch for 14 yards. That could have been a couple more catches for a lot more yards. And we see you, Calvin Johnson. Like we know you were pretty open. And Gordon, Thomas Gordon. I mean, again, I that is a guy who, like, the team writ large, like, he has roller coaster games where he'll have like a holding penalty that you just know he would give anything to have back, and then at the same time he makes an absolutely unbelievable one-handed highlight reel catch and had a really good block on Hyman's touchdown run. So it's, there were guys who did really well.
If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients, no fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group, compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation. And go Cats. So shall we look around the conference? The rest of the conference from this past weekend. We had Oregon big over Michigan, 38-17.
I didn't think this one would be quite the blowout it was, but man, Oregon really put a stamp on it, didn't they?
Yeah. And again, this to say it's apples and oranges is I could not be. Oregon is maybe the best team in the country, but
I mean they're ranked number 1 right now. They are the best team in the country.
Right. I mean, and we say it's like tooting our own horn, like this is what we predicted was going to happen, but Oregon went into Ann Arbor and they could have cared less. And that's, I don't think Michigan, Ann Arbor ain't exactly a fortress right now. Let's put it that way. And again, we're not trying to win by 21. We only need to win by 1 point. So that was kind of good to see.
Ohio State, Penn State. The Buckeyes go on the road, win 20-13. Franklin was getting a little salty after the game. I wasn't watching it, but did anyone see like what was going on there?
I mean,
he was mad, but and I think the fans were mad too. But if I would have been a fan and I would have watched that that goal line set of downs, man, that was brutal.
My understanding is that the fans booed the players when they came over to sing the alma mater, and a large proportion of the players basically left in the middle of the song to go up the tunnel.
Yeah.
And I don't say that as obviously like neither one of those actions are great. I'm not bringing it up to shit on either the students or the players, but hearing the solid verbal talk about this game, and Ty Hildebrand is a Penn State alum, hearing them talk about this game, and I like this tracks big time for me. Like the last time Penn State beat Ohio State was 2016. And they've played every year, and it's always the same.
Yep.
Penn State's offense can do nothing. Their defense is good enough to keep Ohio State within shooting distance, but there's this element of futility where they like this is not a last second missed field goal or a drive to win the game that just comes up short. It's
I mean, they
get suffocated.
They had first and goal from the 3 with a chance to tie the game, and they didn't get in on 4 straight downs. And if you're a Penn State fan, to everything you just said, you're like, it's never happening. And like that's the thing. And there are a couple of the play calls were really weird.
That was 5 minutes left that they couldn't get in, and then Ohio State goes on an 11 play, 5-minute 13-second drive to.
I can only
ice
imagine the life force that must have drained out of that stadium. Like
Yeah.
If you're a Penn State fan, I can imagine you're like, this is never going to happen.
Yeah, and it feels like Franklin. And we've talked about late game James Franklin for years now, for as long as he's been there, and it feels like they can't get over the top. And we said it before. We said it before this game. The way Oregon beat Ohio State, you have to be able to throw deep on the Buckeyes, and Penn State has not had the talent in their wide receiver core for a number of years. They never replaced the guys that they had when they were high flying in, what was it, 21 when they were to the Rose Bowl.
Yep.
On the other side, Ohio State's defense, as you intoned earlier, John, just looks absolutely incredible.
We're all going to see it in 2 weeks.
They're good. They're good.
They only scored 20 points in this game, and Will Howard did throw a touchdown for Penn State as well with the pick 6 early on. But they were quite good on offense. I just continue to believe they don't have that extra gear that they're going to need to take on Oregon or
Indiana,
Georgia or Texas, or maybe even Indiana. We will see. Let's see Indiana get past Michigan first and slay that dragon before they take on the ultimate boss.
Well, speaking of Indiana, after the first quarter, they're down 10-0, and I'm guessing Kurt Cignetti like, "Fuck that."
Yeah,
47-10 was the final.
47 unanswered points. 47 unanswered points.
It's so funny too, because every week, like even this past week, people are like, well, like Aiden Childs and like Michigan State. And it's like, this is what Indiana deals with every week, and it's like, slay this dragon, and then Indiana like lights the dragon on fire and like cuts it into a million pieces. And I was like, their schedule isn't great. I saw someone point out at this time of the season last year, like in almost every metric, they match right up with Michigan last year, including strength of schedule, including who they've played to this point in the season and how they've beaten those teams. They're good at everything. And they don't make any. And like people are like slap a Penn State jersey on this team, everyone would say that they're a national title team, and it's true. Like it is. Like they're like, we watch this team. Like, oh, have they not played the hardest schedule? Yeah, but they're kicking the shit out of everybody.
Well, and I like what is so impressive is your typical Indiana team, your typical non-blue blood team, would not have the depth that this Indiana team has. I mean, they have multiple excellent running backs, multiple excellent receivers that can do damage. They didn't have their starting quarterback for a game, and beat Washington by 2 touchdowns.
He came back through 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, right. and a lot of the reason they started slow this week was Rourke. It's his first game back after getting thumb surgery, which is I'm sure he was feeling that throughout the course of this contest.
And he still absolutely destroyed Michigan State. Like,
oh my god!
I mean, again, like for me, Indiana has to play Michigan went out the window a long time ago. Michigan has to play Indiana. That sucks for Michigan. Yeah. Sucks for you.
I think Indiana's a 14-point favorite.
Yeah, I mean that's just spread the disrespect on. They've been dealing with it all season. It's like that should be 21-0 and it won't be. And it's like the same. Like they deal with this every single week, and they're just so good. It is wild, though, that as good as they are, they can go 11-1, and if they don't beat Ohio State, which they'd have to do in Columbus, then they probably won't play for the Big Ten title. I mean, it's just crazy. But they sure as hell will make the playoff at 11-1.
They
So,
will.
yeah. So
this is by the way, this is the best argument for the 12-team playoff that I've ever
that's
like.
for-
This Indiana
that's for
team
sure.
is making the case.
Oh, for
that's
sure.
true. For sure.
Minnesota goes to Champaign and comes off with a 25-17 win.
So I was particularly surprised that Minnesota was a 3-point favorite going into this game because, and John, in your words, like these two teams feel very similar to each other. And I was like, yeah, and they're playing at Illinois, and it just like Minnesota seems to have found something, and maybe the best thing is like their identity has been the same for 5 years.
Well, the funny thing is too is like Brosmer's kind of good, which means they can.
I don't know about that.
He's all right.
Darius
they can-
Taylor is
Well, that's the
quite
thing.
excellent.
They can run the ball super well, and they can kind of throw. It's just so nuts because, again, we talked about this with Michigan. We sort of alluded to it last week. There is another world where Minnesota's 8-1 right now. Like, they blew that North Carolina game. And we know the onside kick situation against Michigan, which it just looks so different now because I think just about everyone would say Minnesota's better than Michigan now. And it didn't feel that way at the time. But, Minnesota's a couple bad breaks away from, again, being 8-1.
Well, they did recover. Altmaier fumbled the ball twice, leading to, 3 points for Minnesota, and then he fumbled again on the last Illinois possession. So
the single biggest thing from Illinois perspective, and should really matter to all of you Cats fans, is Illinois is having real trouble scoring points right now. It's been a long time since they scored any kind of points against any team that wasn't Purdue, and our defense is right there with all the ones that they've played over that stretch.
Great. Love it. Good for them.
Yep.
Speaking of
Altmaier's, specifically Altmaier's completion percentage has started to dip. His touchdowns have not looked as he hasn't put up multiple touchdowns since that Purdue game. Now, granted, they played Michigan, Oregon, and Minnesota. So
I'm just loving. Scuzz just stepped right in front of Sam to talk about Luke Altmaier. Sam, what did you have something you want to talk about, Sam?
Speaking of falling off the cliff, UCLA goes into Lincoln and knocks off Nebraska 27-20. I think Nebraska is like allergic to the bowl season or something.
Oh my God,
They're giving it a shot, aren't they?
They sure are. I mean, they're 5-4 right now. Looking at the rest of their schedule, they're at Southern Cal, they're home for Wisconsin, they're at Iowa. There's a real good chance they could lose all three the way their offense has just been so mediocre at best.
We were so high on Nebraska, and then the season started, and it all seemed to be, and then they just lost the ability to execute in a football game. I mean, this is where we talked about it's like if you step out of the Northwestern bubble, like Nebraska, like forgot how to play football. Like they are just a mess right now. This UCLA team that we talked about, like they have no business being in this game for travel reasons alone. That team should be just a dead team walking, and they came in and they just bruised Nebraska in this game. And like the way Nebraska's playing right now, they can 100% go 5-7.
Oh yeah.
So some of this is probably a come down off of that Ohio State game, and a letdown after
maybe
probably underestimating and then getting obliterated by IU, followed by what they felt like was, I'm sure in their locker room they feel like that Ohio State game, their opportunity win was taken away by the refs, and they're pretty down on themselves. Still, losing to UCLA like this is, I believe they were down 27-7, and they made a little bit of a push at the end. But Raiola's numbers, this was his worst game of the season, by a stretch. He is getting sacked at a tremendous rate. Now compared to earlier in the year, and it does not look good.
It's So I watched a little of that game, and it is funny. And obviously, I'm not breaking any news here. I think everyone knows this, that he basically is like Mahomes cosplaying. Like
Yeah.
he in every way wants to be Patrick Mahomes. He wears the same number, wears his hair the same way, like dresses like him in every way, and has modeled his entire football game after him. But watching him try to move in the pocket like Mahomes when he so clearly is not Mahomes in that way, you're like, you are too slow to be doing what you're trying to do right now. That's not who you are. This whole Pat Mahomes thing goes only so far. You're probably going to be a great quarterback, but this will not be your thing. You are kind of big and kind of slow, and you're just going to keep getting lit up in the backfield if you keep trying to do this.
Well, they were supposed to be a good rushing team with a great offensive line. I mean, that's like the whole ethos of Matt Rule, and
Yep.
Raiola is supposed to be like the icing on top that took them over the edge, and they have struggled to run the ball. I think the offensive coordinator is getting vilified. The Northwestern Bell. I get, like, there's a reason we go through this every week, talking about all the teams in the conference. Part of it is just we find it fun to crap on Nebraska and Wisconsin when we get the opportunity, etc. Part of it is that it is a bit like cathartic to examine some other teams that are also having struggles.
When there are oh so many of them.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes.
We have to give Iowa their flowers. I mean, I hate to do it. They beat Wisconsin 42-10. They have scored 40 points in 3 of their last 4 games.
I mean, go ahead, Scuzz.
Well, so I like the thought on them we had coming into the year is that on paper the offensive line looked to be improved. We felt that they were going to be able to run the ball. We didn't know what was going to, like, we were not confident that this coaching staff and Tim Lester in particular were going to be able to build like a dynamic offense beyond that. And the reality is that they've been so good running the ball, they have not needed the passing game. Brendan Sullivan in this game was 7 of 10 for 93 yards, but they rushed for 330 yards on Wisconsin.
Good Lord.
And it's wild. He's a perfect fit for what they want to do right now. He just wants to only run, and run hard and tough, which we all know he can do. And he is a perfect fit for representation of the identity that they're trying to have right now.
Well, it works in ways that McNamara didn't, because they don't have the weapons,
right,
or the pass blocking efficiency to really. And McNamara is not a game breaking quarterback, regardless. But they don't have the weapons for that to give Caleb Johnson the running space. Like season starts and Caleb Johnson starts tearing people apart. Well, teams figure that out, and Michigan State was like, okay, we won't let Caleb Johnson run. Guess what Northwestern did? We didn't let Caleb Johnson run. And it wasn't until Sullivan came in and started to
spread things
out horizontally that opened up the space for Johnson. And that's what, like, it's kind of a perfect fit.
Yeah. And Jacob Gill had a touchdown pass in this game too. All you Northwestern fans, you need to prepare yourself for this now, and you just need to accept it. Iowa fans were calling for Brendan Sullivan, and we all know, like, the backup quarterback is the best job because you're always the guy everyone always wants. But Brendan Sullivan's come in and won 2 football games for them. They're about to play UCLA, Maryland, and Nebraska. There's a really good chance Brendan Sullivan's going to go 5-0 for Iowa this year and be utterly beloved by Hawkeye Nation. And that just, it is what it is. Like, just get used to it. And I mean, good for Brendan Sullivan. It's wild, but good on him.
Yeah.
It does sting the nostrils.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about this more next week.
For sure. And then USC goes to Seattle and loses to Washington 26-21. Don't really have a lot to say about that game. I mean,
I think we're running out the clock on Lincoln Riley. I think he's NFL OC maybe. Again, Caleb Williams OC maybe, something like that. I don't know. Maybe Lincoln Riley has reached that point where he's got to be a head coach somewhere now. But it ain't going to be USC. I don't think he's moving on from this one.
I mean, it's he's got 4 losses right now, and 3 of them are defensible. Oh, I'm sorry, 5 losses right now. 3 of them are defensible. Losing at Minnesota and losing at Maryland are inexplicable, and frankly, losing to Michigan the way they did is also. I mean, he has snatched defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yeah, they're
even against Penn State, right?
Yeah.
It's very much like now they're going to play Nebraska, and it's like someone's got to win that game. But USC still has to play Notre Dame this season. They ain't winning that game. I mean, unless some miracle happens. The crazy thing is, they play UCLA, like that rivalry game, and those two teams, as of right now, actually kind of match up, which is just insane. It really says a lot of where UCLA has fallen.
Looking around the country, any other kind of big games jump out? I mean,
I can't remember what our verbatim was, but it was something along the lines of Texas A&M just can't wait to hork up a win against a loss against South Carolina.
Yep.
Yep.
That is exactly what happened.
Big 12 went topsy-turvy because Iowa State and Kansas State, who were the 2, I think, top teams in the conference other than BYU, both lost. You have Clemson losing in hysterical fashion in a home game against Louisville to basically step out of the path to the ACC championship game. Miami putting up 53 on Duke. Cam Ward threw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns.
SMU.
Yeah,
SMU and Miami are on a collision course in the ACC for sure.
Which is exactly what everyone thought going into this season.
Yeah. Well, when you have a chance to get a classic ACC matchup like SMU Miami, like you're always.
Army remains undefeated, beating an absolutely god awful Air Force team.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say Army has not had to play Notre Dame yet, so on
next week, right?
Yeah, on they roll. What was the other one I was looking about? Oh, so Boise State. I'm legit. Boise State's athletic department, but specifically their social media team, are just fumbling the bag so hard right now because every week all I hear is how awesome Ashton Ginty is. And then I'm like, well, sweet, let me go watch some highlights. And I can never find highlights anywhere. This dude's turning in this unbelievable performance week after week after week. I had to just at the click of my fingers see like his top 3 or 4 highlights from every game. And it never seems to be easy to do that. And that's crucial since almost none of us are watching Boise State play football every week. It's like, do you want your guy to have a shot at the Heisman or not? Like, you need to get eyeballs on what he's doing. But in any case, Boise has a really good chance of making the playoff, which would be pretty sweet if they can keep this up.
Yeah, for sure. Turning our attention to this upcoming weekend, like we say, Northwestern is taking a week off, resting up, getting ready for big game at Wrigley the week after.
There's a bunch of teams in the Big Ten with the week off.
Yeah, it is a pretty light schedule here. You got Friday night, 8:00 Central on Fox. Iowa at UCLA. Iowa a 6.5-point road favorite.
They're giving UCLA a lot of love for what they did against Nebraska this past week, and I don't blame them. But I feel like the UCLA, that they're not equipped to stop whatever Iowa's got cooking right now. If Iowa can keep this going, like they're clearly the better team.
I agree.
Yeah.
in a word.
It was hilarious watching NFL yesterday and watching like Fox just trying to promote the hell out of like, ooh, big matchup on our big noon Sunday is Purdue, Ohio State.
The line has moved. Purdue's people are giving Purdue some respect. It's gone from 38 to 37.
37 and a half. Yeah.
This is really a week of mismatches in the Big Ten, and I know they already went to Indiana, but that feels like a better game to highlight this week. I mean, maybe they felt like coming off of the Penn State loss, they couldn't highlight Washington Penn State, which I think is the whiteout game.
Yeah, I know Penn State really wished that the Ohio State game was a whiteout game.
They were mad that game got moved to 5. Which, honestly, it kind of sucks when those things are forced by television, etc. But this is going to be a bloodbath.
It's like 37.5. Like, I don't even know. How do you come up with a number like that? Like, I don't, like, how do you bet that one way or the other? I have no idea. Like, that's so many points. And again, like, gird your loins, because we're probably going to be looking at a number not dissimilar from this in, a week from now. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Just hide your kids from that one.
35-0 Purdue covers.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Also at 11 o'clock on NBC, you got Minnesota at Rutgers. Minnesota 6.5-point road favorite.
We talked about last week. We were like, well, Minnesota and Illinois feels like a pretty good matchup. This doesn't feel like a good matchup.
No,
it ought to.
Again, I don't know what has happened to Rutgers.
I know.
And now they had a week off, and they definitely had some defensive injuries, and maybe some of those things have reverted. And if they're, you've talked about it for a couple of years now, John. Like, their linebackers are strong.
I know.
They try to run the ball and stop the run, and that should turn this into like one of your classic Big Ten.
I know. Like, it ought to be like Monangai
but
versus Taylor. It ought to be like a great matchup. But Rutgers just can't function right now. So I don't know.
Yeah, feels like Minnesota's going to run away with this.
Yeah,
or maybe not run away, but win comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
2:30 on CBS. Michigan at Indiana. As we mentioned earlier, Indiana, a 14-point home favorite.
I mean, Indiana, like, Signetti, you irascible son of a bitch. Find a 50 spot for this Wolverine team, Signetti. Like, how many points? They're giving you 14. 14. You're 8th in the nation. They're giving you 14 points over the worst Michigan team in a decade. All right? Find a 50 spot for them. Like, just keep giving them.
I just, Michigan's defense has just really had some ups and downs this year.
What have their ups been?
Again, statistically, they are almost exactly where we are defensively.
Yeah,
their defense is why they have 5 wins.
They've had some good first halves. I feel like Texas, right? They played reasonable against Texas, but then they just lost the plot because their offense can't do anything. Like, that's going to happen in this game where, maybe Indiana, maybe it's 17-7 at half, like Indiana was against Washington, and then this feels like the second half is going to get away from them. They're not going to be able to. I mean, unless they're able to really run the ball effectively, but Indiana's been good stopping the run this year, so I don't know.
Plus, Indiana's played an offense that was at this level once this season when they played us, and they ain't going to let what happened with us happen a second time.
No, that's true.
I think they're going to be like, you ain't getting no 28 points.
Yeah, I mean, like, cover the deep passes, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
6 o'clock on Big Ten Network. Maryland at Oregon. Oregon,
Lord Almighty.
A 25-point home favorite.
I would say the Loxley farewell tour goes out to Oregon this week. This one ain't going to be close. It's 25-point spread, and that sounds about right. Oregon's going to roll.
And then 7 o'clock on Peacock. Washington at Penn State. Penn State, a 13-point home favorite.
Whiteout game or no whiteout game, I'd want to be Washington for this one. Like, if you have to go into Penn State for a whiteout game, what better time to do it than right now? Right after the hopes and dreams of this team were crushed.
Oh, I don't know that I agree, because here's the thing about the playoff era. Penn State is still very much in contention. They are alive.
That's true.
They are going to be angry, and they're going to take out all their crap on a sleepy. I mean, I guess for Washington, the upside is that this is going to feel like a 3 p.m. kickoff instead of like a 9 a.m. kickoff.
I guess you make a good point. Like, in that Washington is neither Ohio State nor Michigan, they will probably get smoked by Penn State. It's the James Franklin way.
Washington traveling to the East Coast has not gone well for the most part this year.
True.
And now, they almost beat Rutgers, which in retrospect, So, and I think Penn State's going to be just an angry hive of nastiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking nationally, I mean, we got games on. You got some action on Tuesday night and Wednesday night.
It's SEC week.
Yeah. We got, Friday, Cal Wake Forest. We talked about Iowa UCLA. And a couple other, group of 5 teams. It's SEC week. Florida,
South
Texas.
Carolina playing a ranked Vandy team is just cool to me. Like both of those teams are on highs right now, and one of them's taking a win out of this.
Yeah.
I mean, much like Texas A&M horking it up on the road to South Carolina. Now South Carolina has to go on the road to Vanderbilt, where, like, they haven't seen a guy like Pavia yet this year.
Yeah, that's true.
He's like a better version of what Sellers is for South Carolina, frankly.
So it is wild to me, and I feel like, again, I'm beating this dead horse again. This Florida-Texas game, Arch Manning's going to be sitting on the bench for Texas in this game, while Florida, if the Georgia game holds, will start Yale's quarterback from last year in this game. That's who they played the majority of the game is this past game when injuries forced them in. They're down to their third string guy, and he's like a transfer quarterback from Yale. So worth mentioning too. It's interesting to bring up transfer quarterback from Yale because this year's Yale football team took an L to Cole Freeman's Columbia Lions this past weekend. Big game for Cole. Came in. This is again like Brendan Sullivan's, buddy last year. Those guys were joined at the hip on the sideline. Comes in. He has not started the whole season, but he was pressed into duty, I think, by injury and led them on a big comeback win over Yale. So go get him, Cole Freeman.
Well, I mean, the other weird, Aiden Warner didn't play at Yale. He was there.
Oh, that's
I mean, he's listed as a freshman, so maybe he was.
He was a freshman transfer, but
gotcha.
He was at Yale and then probably just transferred after his freshman year because he redshirted.
Gotcha.
Is what I imagine.
Because he saw them Cole Freeman footsteps and was like, I got to get out of town. It's Cole's show now.
Yeah, I mean, 1-8 Florida State visits 7-1 Notre Dame in one of the most hyped games that of the preseason that could not be less interesting.
Yeah. I was watching I saw it on Twitter, Florida State fans trying to get up for this game, just because of the tradition, of just the tradition of the two teams and the matchup, and it was almost kind of sad. I just feel bad. I mean, Florida State. Again, there are people out there who hate Florida State, I'm sure, especially in the South and various places. That ain't us. It sucks.
Speak for yourself, my
speak
friend.
for yourself. I got no love for Florida State.
Yeah, well, I take it back then. But I don't know. I just sad seeing them this bad.
I mean, I like Mike Norvell. I mean, I hope I wish him well in his future endeavors because he ain't going to be coaching at Florida State much longer.
Yeah, true. All right.
I have zero sadness that Florida State is this bad, and I friggin' love it.
Yeah. I take it all back. Well, Notre Dame's going to kick the crap out of them, so.
I also hope that Clemson loses at Virginia Tech for what that's worth.
Yeah, well sure. I mean, that's just funny. Anytime Clemson loses is funny.
Holy War this weekend?
Yeah. I think it's the first time it's a conference game. I don't think they've ever been in the same conference. Is that right?
Couldn't tell you. I mean, BYU was independent for all those years and then just joined the Big 12, right?
Yeah, but I feel like BYU might have been in the WAC, maybe have been Mountain West for a minute. I forget, but it's a conference game, Holy War, which is cool.
I don't know. We got Alabama, LSU, but does anyone really care about that game?
Our buddy Chris just twitched.
Yeah, just kidding. We know it's a huge game for y'all. Go get them, Chris.
Georgia Ole Miss as well. That's
Yeah, you've got classic conference matchup: Army North Texas.
Oh yeah,
tradition rich. Just so funny. It's Army. Clearly, they were well positioned. This new American conference, where it's did any of you even know North Texas was in the American? Well, they are. And they're about to get thumped by Army.
And another big longtime
Oklahoma,
conference.
Missouri are playing a conference game, just not in the right conference.
Yeah,
Right.
So is UCF and Arizona State.
Yeah. Oh my God. It breaks the brain, doesn't it?
It sure. I mean, we've been doing this joke all year, and it's
Yep.
still funny,
Yep.
and it will not stop being funny for a long time.
I know.
Sammy, your Tatonkas are
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
potentially back.
they're
They've got a
they're
path.
right there. I mean,
got a
bowl
path.
eligible for the first time forever.
Yep.
You know, definitely in it for the potential Big 12 championship. I mean, they got to go to Texas Tech.
Yeah, this is one where it's like Colorado needs to win this one. People are actually like tuning into Colorado again. It kind of feels like a lot of people kind of tuned out on them.
I mean,
And-
big noon Sunday next week is in Boulder for Colorado, Utah.
And I mean, like they had Travis Hunter on game day this past week. Like they're, and deservedly so. He's a Heisman candidate, but they're
Heisman favorite, maybe.
Yeah, could be. So I mean, it's like they're people's eyeballs are turning back in on Colorado. Let's see these guys deliver.
Anything else to mention, either football wise or otherwise, before we go?
No, I don't think so. Again, it was awesome to see hoops start like this tonight. Again, this ended right before we hit record, and just to see them come out the way that they did and have there be real excitement and real that special sauce of fans discovering exciting new players and how many students were at the game and everything, and it's awesome. It's great. It's special. It's magical, and let's hope that it's the start of us continuing this awesome run that this team is on.
Yeah. The Cats play at Dayton Saturday night, and then they have UIC on Tuesday night of next week. And you know what? Let's just throw it out there. Go to. Is it Apple Podcasts these days, Sammy?
And anywhere, yeah, Apple Podcasts. I think. Leave us a 5-star review.
Yes.
And write us. Write a review. And
leave
take
us
a
a
screenshot
5-star
of it.
review,
Yeah.
and make sure we have a way to contact you coming out of that. And
Take a screenshot of it and shoot it and DM it to us at Westlaw Pirates
Yep.
on Twitter.
Yep.
And
If
we'll
you're
pick a
interested
winner
in that
to go to the
UIC game,
Yeah.
Yep, we have tickets, not just our own. We've got some eyeballs into some other ones as well. So, and then EIU later that week. Handful of games. I think 5 games in total, 6 games in total throughout November. So, we'll keep this train going because this team looks like it's going to be fun again this year, and we want to hype it up.
Absolutely.
Last thing, Friday. Remember, this Friday, November 8th, 1 p.m. BTN. Tune in and watch your unbelievable field hockey team that just completed only the 4th undefeated regular season for any Northwestern sports team ever, right? Watch them start their postseason journey. 1 p.m. BTN Friday.
So with that, we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight. Head to our website, westlawpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all at Westlaw Pirates. And you can always email the show, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics, and look for us in the West parking lot flying the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the 4th. For John Lacombe and Eric Scousbaugh, I'm Sam Walter. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.